Does this new EVH model have ties to 70s Gibson? We're going to try to find that out today. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. What EVH model is that? It's the SA-126. I do believe this was first announced about a year ago. It doesn't actually have anything to do with Eddie Van Halen, but his son, Wolfgang, designed this to be his own signature lineup. So let's go ahead and grab some first impressions here. Straight out of the box, it's a nice glossy finish on this particular model, so that's looking good. The back is also matching, but the neck has this very interesting phenomenon where they put the gloss lacquer on the backside of the headstock, but they masked off the neck to leave this a nice smooth satin sheen. Now from a player standpoint, I totally get that. Makes it feel a little bit more comfortable and easier to play. The guitar itself feels rather massive, like it's kind of like a semi-hollow ES-335, maybe even a little bit bigger than that. But that totally makes sense because he's a bigger, taller guy. I could see how this would be very comfortable for him, but if you're not as vertically gifted, you might not enjoy this. I find these inlays interesting because it almost just looks like you have like black strings running through it. No, those are actually segmented triple blocks instead of just a single one. But these are available in two finishes: translucent purple, which we're documenting today, and tobacco burst. However, if you don't care about the fancy quilted maple top, you can step down to a plain top version that has a matte finish all over for $100 cheaper at $1,800 in stealth black or a matte army drab. But I told you earlier that this one might have some ties to 70s Gibson. Let's go ahead and talk about that. So first things first, we've got a harmonica bridge. That's something that Gibson was famous for using in that early 70s time period. We've got witch hat knobs. Now, Fender and various brands have used something similar, but again, that's an early 70s spec. But that's all coincidental. This is actually kind of like the Les Paul Signature. Now, if you're thinking, Les Paul Signature, this? No, we're talking the actual model called Les Paul Signature. This was one of the final takes on the low impedance series. So we're talking things like the Les Paul recording model, the Triumph bass. But this final one changed up the pickups to look a little bit more normal, and it was a blending of Les Paul Gold Top specs and a 335. I am a big fan of those guitars. They sound phenomenal for clean tones. And you can check one out in this old video here. So now we come back over here. Is it a one-for-one recreation? No, but you can see you've got the whole double cutaway design. At first glance, it definitely looks like a semi-hollow because you do have some sort of an E-hole over here. Apparently that's a tribute to Eddie, but all I see is a scimitar. So like pirate sword stuff going on. But this is not technically a semi-hollow in a traditional sense. This is a chambered mahogany body with an F-hole out of the top to expose it to make it look like that. So think the Gibson Midtown series, that's pretty much exactly where you're at with this one. I will say though, I am happy to report this is still a carved maple top. It's not completely flat like the Midtown, so that's actually a good thing. So it's pretty easy to see the similarities between this model and the Les Paul Signature, but this one's not going for clean tones necessarily. It's definitely built to rock. I'm excited to check this one out a little bit further today. I do want to take a second to point out the case. It's actually a really nice kind of beige exterior. It's got a little bit of texturing to it, so it's not super flat. Got the EVH branding. You've got black chrome latches, which looks pretty sweet, as well as a regular black handle. And the interior of the case matches pretty nicely with a nice dark blue. Not much to speak of in the case candy department. Just a case key, final inspection hang tag, an owner's manual warranty little pamphlet here. But EVH is part of Fender, so I was just expecting the regular Fender box, but no. A, you get all the cool branding like we just saw. B, it's a double-walled box that feels extra sturdy. And then check this out, they have additional double-layered inserts to keep the case steady in the box, and then another special one to protect it on the top, and then there's another one of these in the bottom of the box. EVH is not messing around with their packing materials. I just wanted to shout that out real quick. But as we go ahead and throw this one over on the workbench, everybody say thank you, Pete, for using my new Guitar Day program so we could check this guitar out together. If you're buying a brand new guitar that's $1,100 or higher and you'd like to see it featured on the show, feel free to check that out on my website, troglysguitarshow.com/NGD. This thing has some freaky stuff going on. You don't realize it until you start to tear it apart that there's a lot different about this. When you first get it, it looks like this. Regular humbucker, right? No. Did EVH forget to put the pickup height adjustment screws on it? What on earth? No, that's actually the design. Because you gotta remember, his father preferred a humbucker just drilled directly into the body. And there's people that say that gives you the better tone. So this has the look of being mounted in a pickup ring just without that actually there. With it removed though, it just looks like this. There's really not a lot of cavity exposed, just enough for the wire to go through. Once I realized that, I thought, oh, so did he leave this exposed for easy access of adjusting the height of the pickup? There was a Fender Japan exclusive Telecaster called the Miyavi model that had a similar thing built in within its pick guard. But no, when you take that off, here's how it's secured. Just 2 screws on either side of the leg, as you can see here. So my question is, why didn't they just get custom pickup rings that don't have those drilled? It might just be because they wanted to give you the option of switching it over, because that's what that additional hole right here is for. I'm just not sure if it was routed deeply enough to actually do that setup or not. Technically speaking, you do not need the pickup ring at all. If you would prefer to run it like this for easy access of adjusting those, yeah, you can. You'll just be left with holes and finish impressions. But those were some things that I noticed that were interesting. So that means if you hate how humbuckers usually move in a pickup surround, this one doesn't move hardly at all. Because not only is it secured to the body with 4 screws, but you also have these foam blocks underneath. But you're also going to notice the neck pickup comes stock upside down, from tradition anyways, so your adjustable slugs are on the bottom side. But the back sides of the pickups look like this. The other one's just labeled neck, this one's bridge. They just call them the SA-126 humbucker. And it is 4 conductor wiring. However, it does not appear that we have any fancy electronics on this to make use of that stock. I found it interesting how this is purpose routed. It's actually a pretty shallow cavity. They don't take out a huge area to put the wires through either. It's just a small little wormhole there. But here's the next thing that we didn't really talk about earlier. We already said it's a chambered mahogany body. We can see that pretty clearly right here with the wood grain. However, it has a basswood center block, but it's not like a center block that runs along the entire thing. The mahogany body actually rises up to meet it almost halfway, so it's a rather small block. Let's see that a little bit more clearly with my endoscope. There we go. So right here is our basswood center block, and it just joins right onto the mahogany body. So when they route these out, they do leave just a little bit there, so it almost has like a dual wooded center block, which I think is pretty nifty, and they leave it like a T shape down here to put your strap button into. So they don't have to press any woods for the top, back, and sides. It's traditionally constructed as far as that's concerned, but oh, that's interesting. Our 3-way toggle switches area isn't completely routed out either. They leave just a little bit of room there. I wonder why. That looks like a pretty tight fit. But we can see the bottom side of our maple top. And with only $100 price difference between the quilty one and the non-quilty, I think it's pretty safe to say that we're using a veneer out here. I'll show you some more reasons why I think that in a minute, but there's no way to get to the other side until we open up our back plate. The pickup cavities are painted, so we can't actually see the veneer there. However, if you look with a really keen eye, it almost looks like the veneer stops slightly short before where the binding begins. Because if it was just straight up maple showing, you would imagine that would stretch all the way to the edges. You can also notice that a little bit in a few other locations. And over here, it almost looks like maybe there was a little bit of glue seepage or something. But my camera's having a real hard time showing the proper color of this. It is a very deep royal purple. All the things I'm telling you about right now, it is not noticeable unless you're really getting in this guitar's face. But it appears that they put the binding in within 2 pieces. You can see a pretty obvious seam line right there. Some contamination got in there. So that means one piece goes along like so, and then the other one over here. But anyways, back to our electronics. I was telling you these are meant for rocking. This one's 9.1 k ohms in the bridge, neck position 7.69, and the middle just for fun 4.17. It's labeled volume, volume, tone, tone, but let's make sure they didn't change anything. Is this still the bridge controls? Yes. And just for the sake of being complete, is this still the neck? Correct. But now, bridge and tailpiece time. Here you can see how the harmonica bridge is done up. They have slightly different posts than other bridges many manufacturers use yet today. I was shocked they didn't try to give this some other clever name. They just call it the EVH harmonica bridge. The backside of it looks like so, with no additional EVH branding on it anywhere that I can see. And the tailpiece is full weight. We're now moving on from our maple, mahogany, poplar body. We can move on to our mahogany neck and ebony fretboard. Now there's compliments to pay and some criticisms along this fretboard. Let's start with the criticisms. There's some mysterious scratching on this fretboard. Like, we're not talking typical tooling mark scratching. I mean, they're just like in every which direction. Now, to be fair, you have to be in the discerning light to see it, but I don't know what the EVH factory's doing on some of these things. I'm sure some very fine sanding would clean that up just fine, because it's not like they're super deep by any means. But the next thing is our perloid inlays. They were really dirty when I first got this, to the point where I thought there was staining within them. But after I conditioned the fretboard, that all cleaned up nicely. However, you can still see that in just about every single side marker inlay. But the difference here is there's a natural satin finish over the sides of the neck, so that's permanently on those inlays. But now for the pros. Do you see how rolled over that fretboard edge is? That is going to be super comfortable to play. And check this out, a truss rod wheel at the end of your fretboard. People always like those features. It's advertised as an EVH modified C neck, measuring 1.69 inches at the nut, 2.07 at the 12th. It's a pretty skinny 0.78 first fret neck depth, only increasing to 0.86 by the 12th. Here's a look at that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. You can just see how slim that is, but it maintains a C shape. However, in your cording area, you almost have a little bit of asymmetricalness here. I took that reading twice just to make sure I had it right. So just a little bit thicker where your thumb might wrap. If you like thin necks, you're going to enjoy this. For me, it feels a bit too slim. But we do have a compound fretboard radius, so it starts at 12 inches, and then as you get up here, it transforms to 16 inches, utilizing a 24 3/4 inch scale, and it's 22 medium jumbo style frets. They definitely have some good height to them. Here's another kind of nitpick thing. You can see they actually slice the fretboard a little bit deeper than the frets actually go into. Now, most of them they cover in with like some wood filler and or dust, but there's a few that you can see where they missed that process. I don't think that's a huge deal by any means. Just something I thought I'd point out. And now we've got our EVH headstock. Kind of reminds me of a Dean in a way. It's got that pitchfork in the center of it, and you've got single banded binding running all along that. And of course you've got a truss rod cover saying SA-126. Let's take a look at our truss rod. There's no truss rod. Of course not. I already told you it's down here. It's a truss rod wheel. So that had to have been Wolfgang going, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we just put a regular truss rod cover on it anyway? Just because all the guitars he's probably looked up to has it, so he wanted it on his signature. Makes sense. I think it's funny. As far as the nut material, it is a tusk nut. And now we can move on to the back. So the top, I was telling you it's more of a royal purple. This is showing up accurate to how it looks in person. This one has a little bit more of a reddish violet tint to it. But what's even more fun, unfortunately it's a kind of cloudy overcast day. I'm not sure if the outside B-roll shots are going to show it, but the family of mahogany that they're using here has a lot of dancing and figuring to it. So despite a few of the QC flaws that we've saw here, I think that more than makes up for it because this is a beautiful example on the back. When you open up the back control plate cavities, here's what you got. Looks like CTS pots with a whole lot of room for modifications if you'd like. And we've got some red capacitors. A little hard to see, but you can see some of the plain grain under here. So once again, that confirms our veneer status. And looking at the other two colors, I couldn't actually find in the spec sheet that they had a maple top too. Now that I see how this thing's constructed, it's most likely they have that as well. But if you own one and know differently, please chime in the comment section. Then looking at our toggle switch cavity, honestly, I can't really see anything important to note, but I'd imagine they left it thicker there. That way they have more wood to secure the back plate too. We didn't see the screws sticking through, so maybe that's why. But that is a really tight fitting cavity. And then, hey, surprise, it's a bolt-on neck. And then double surprise, we've got 3 strap buttons. So one of them is incorporated within your neck bolts, which I always thought was a cool design. So it stands up proud, but if you don't like it there, you also have one over here on the horn, as well as the typical one on the bottom edge. As far as the design of the heel contour, I'd say they did a decent job. It gets out of your way. They even stepped the body down just a little bit right there to help it get out of your way even more, but still maintaining the structural integrity. But if you read your spec sheet, it's a mahogany neck labeled as 2 pieces. Do you see a center seam? Is it 2 of them glued together? No, they're disclosing the scarf joint. So right here is the seam line where they put the headstock piece and the neck piece together. And then again, they screw it to the body over here. But maybe in this lighting, you can see that masked off line right here where they transition from gloss into satin. But they did decide to put a little black stinger over here. And you can see our serial number here, SA-126 for the model. 24, I'd imagine, is 2024. And then the number produced, 1,583. and these are being made in Mexico. When these were first announced, people were curious, where are they making them? Where are they making them? Then the prices came out, and it's safe to say that they're not USA custom shop at that price. And we've got EVH branded tuners. Something about those tuner tips just reminds me of cheapy import knockoff Grovers. But the edges of our headstock were left natural, just for a nice color separation. And all said and done, this one weighs just a hair under 8 pounds. 7 pounds, 15.6 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how these humbuckers sound. Tones are rather interesting. The neck pickup is ridiculously dark. And our bridge. Still call it dark, but a bit more attacking. But within the middle position, the bridge really shines through. So arm yourself with that knowledge. Something else I'm noticing, these frets are actually quite tall in comparison to that smaller sized neck. I find myself bending the notes out of tune. You really have to have a light touch with this guitar. As it's in tune, something to keep in mind. But now let's kick on the dirt. I'm noticing these pickups are a lot louder in my amp than usual. Now keep in mind, I have fluorescent lighting on top of other professional lightings. My amp is always humming away. But to get around that, normally I turn my ceiling lights on and just have these two over here. And the humming's like way less, but these ones are still picking it up like crazy. The neck pickup sounds quite good when you really dig into it for solos. there we go, the new EVH SA-126. What are my final thoughts? I thought I was gonna love this because, kind of Les Paul signature vibes. But the further and further you get into this, I mean, yeah, do they vaguely look similar? Yes, but they're completely different. I honestly did not care for this guitar at all. The pickups didn't quite do it for me. The electronics are kind of noisy, stock from the factory. With my current setup, I don't find the headstock all that attractive, and at $1,900, it seems kind of expensive for what they're giving you. However, from a playability standpoint, if you actually like this style of neck, now that I've played it, what I can tell you is the first 2 frets kind of has more of a D shape. Remember how we were talking about how it's slightly asymmetrical? You're gonna feel that like right here, but that starts to fade away by the 3rd, and then by about right here, just before your 7th fret, it transforms into a beautiful C-shaped neck profile. So if you have a light touch and you like this neck profile, you're gonna like it. But that was my number one thing that I didn't really enjoy about this, is it's so easy to bend the notes out of tune. Now that's player error, honestly, but some of my other guitars aren't quite as noticeable. So maybe you would even just try a heavier gauge string if you were curious about trying this model and you're experiencing similar issues. This is just whatever they came from the factory with. And we talked on the workbench how there is definitely some QC and small nitty-gritty details, but as far as the playability of the instrument, the frets are beautiful straight out of the box. Love the rolled fretboard edge. They are doing some things right. It's kind of like the John Petrucci model. I didn't care for that, but there's tons of people that love those things. So take this review with a grain of salt. Personally, I don't know if I would suggest picking one of these up. So maybe take this review with a grain of salt, but for me, I don't think I would try another one of these. But I appreciate that he's trying to do something different. I mean, you gotta look at it from his standpoint. Everyone knows his dad's guitars, from the Frankenstrat to everything. He wanted something new that would stand out and be his own. And the E/F hole design is really cool. And I love the 70s attributes to it. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed, learned something new. And we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care.